Making a piece of artwork using the traditional method of batik requires vats of dyes and pans of melted wax. It's a beautiful but time-consuming process. Traditionally, batik was most often used as a method for creating designs on cloth that would be used for clothing or household items. A design was drawn with a pencil and then redrawn with hot wax using a tool like this. This is a chanting tool. Wooden stamps were also sometimes used to create patterning on the fabric. Then the fabric was dipped into various vats of dye to produce an intricate and beautifully patterned cloth. The areas where the wax penetrated the fabric would resist the dye, and once everything was dry, the wax would need to be removed by boiling or scraping the cloth. But by making a batik composition on paper, the ancient process can be taught in a much simpler way. Instead of using wax as our resist, we're going to be using a much more modern material. This is Mod Podge. It's a super gloss version. Instead of brushing it on, I've filled 2 different squeeze bottles with the medium. One has a thicker tip and the other is a fine liner type tip that produces a more detailed line. So this way it can be trailed on, very similar to the way it's applied traditionally with a chanting tool. I'm using a sheet of Canson watercolor paper for my project, and I have given myself just a few very faint pencil lines to guide my composition. So I'm going to start with this thicker bottle, and you really get quite a bit of control using it this way. And then if you would like to go in with the thinner line, you can just add a lot of detail this way. So once you've done all your trailing, your piping with the Mod Podge, the composition will need to dry completely before pigment is added, and with one exception. While I'm using this wet medium, I want to show you something pretty neat that can be done at this stage. I'm going to put a little bit of the gloss Mod Podge in the center of this area. Now I've decided I want this area to be textural, and what I mean by that is just very visually active. So I've just filled in this shape with the wet Mod Podge, and I'm going to use ink crystals in this area. And these are Brusho ink crystals. And they come in these great little containers, and if you've noticed, I've punched 3 to 4 holes in the top of the container. And since it's hard to tell what color I've got, I have also used a marker to put a dot of the color on top of the containers. Now these crystals can be used like this by sprinkling into the wet medium. And as they sit on this Mod Podge, they're going to expand. And I want to show you a contrast here. So this is black that I used in this area. And this was done, the process was done almost identically to that. But this is how much those crystals expand as they sit on the medium. So it's always a good idea to use a little bit less than you think that you're going to want. Now, onto some other ways to use these crystals. In this area, I've just got an atomizer full of water, and I'm going to just lightly mist a portion of the composition with water. Then I can go in and drop the crystals in that area, and you're going to see how much they move. Now another way that I can do that, this is the wet area. So now over here I'm going to drop some crystals, just dry, just a little bit there. And then I'll take my atomizer and just lightly mist. Now you can control how much water you put on this area, obviously. So in contrast, where there's a lot of water used here, you can get movement, some kind of marbled effects. And I can control this and leave this grainier if I want to do that. And then here, I've just sprinkled some of the crystals into this plastic palette. You can use these as a more traditional watercolor. So I'm just adding water right to them. And you can just pick them up with a brush and use them to fill an area. Just like a regular watercolor paint. And as you can see, these crystals go a long way. This method can be used to create a very traditional looking batik pattern or a more modern interpretation, even portraiture. I hope you'll enjoy exploring batik on paper using modern materials. For a PDF and materials list of this lesson plan, please visit dickblick.com.